the Ad Podcast. Today we have Topher Burns, who's the co-founder and brand strategist at Territorial, a brand strategist consultancy based out of Portland. Topher and I have been friends for a long time. We're catching up again. And Topher, thanks so much for coming on, man. Glad to catch up and tell the audience a little bit about what you're up to.
Yes, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. And I would be doing my colleagues a disservice if I didn't appreciate your call out that we're a brand strategist consultancy, but we are actually a full service creative consultancy. So
Oh,
you're giving me
let's
too much
go.
credit. You're giving me too much credit on that one.
Well, thanks for the tee up there.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so let's get into it. Why don't you give me a little bit about your background, a little bit about your origin story? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you get into the industry?
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of the history.
Okay. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I
Nice.
often say is like an amazing place to be from. It is not a place that I would choose to sort of like start a career in communications.
Sure.
Um, but I loved growing up there, still love growing back. Blue skies all the time, great food, really cool people. But I definitely even in high school, I remember people being like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from here." And they're like, "Well, no, yeah, but like, where did you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, here." And everybody's like, "Oh, I thought you were gonna be like Boston or New York or something." And I think I just like I don't know what it was about me that rubbed the very kind people of Albuquerque, New Mexico, the wrong way. But people thought I was maybe a little too acerbic or something. So I was destined to go eastward, and eastward I went to school in DC at American University, and I shopped around for majors. I initially wanted to work in international relations and took like a year and a half worth of classes there, and it was really I was disappointed by how much I thought international relations was going to be like learning about other countries and like how people interact and stuff like that. International relations in school is very much like, here's how you use tax policy and military deployment to get what you want from the countries. So it's just like really like
A little
sobering and kind of,
disheartening.
yeah, like not
Yeah.
fun. I was like, all right, I just got to do something that I think is cool. Like I at this point, I just need to pick a major that I know I can stick with and will enjoy. And that took me to psychology.
Hmm.
And I have a uh, undergraduate degree in psychology, and I trace that a lot kind of as like a dot to my career in advertising and in
Yeah,
strategy.
well, it's all about human
Exactly.
insight and what moves people, right?
Yes, and it pairs kind of the softer stuff, like how are people feeling, with like a lot of numerical rigor. In fact, the psychology majors will tell you that the number one best scoring major on a statistics exam is not statistics majors, but it's psych majors, because kind of
Mm,
everything you do has to be kind of statistically modeled towards like, does this actually prove with statistical significance that like the difference you found in behavior is credible to whatever your experiment was. So it gives you an understanding of kind of like how to take a squishy thing like a human choice and cram it into something that is a little bit more factual or logical. So I really feel like that kind of gave me the foundation for that I brought into the world of communication.
love it. So, how'd you get into the industry after school?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I worked as a waiter for a while, and that was fun. I really had a blast.
Yeah.
Eventually, I kind of just like started temping and dipping a toe in some things, and I got a job as a temp at a marketing company, and
Were you
I
still in DC at this point?
I was, and I did
Okay,
get fired from that job.
nice.
But I was like, this is kind of cool. Like I sort of liked this. And so I moved to New York with a friend, and the first job I got was actually at a PR boutique, kind of like helping as like employee number one, kind of define our offering. I learned a ton there, and that's how I got my foot in the door. It was right around the time when social was starting to blow up, and I
Okay.
was really into how to bring that into our offering, because social up to then had kind of been like just for kids. And right when I started working in PR, a few years later, companies were starting to be like, should we do a Facebook? Like, what does that mean? So we got to work with a lot of companies that we were really punching above our weight, but there weren't a lot of answers out there. So I helped launch Zurich Financial Services and NASA SETI Institute on social.
Wow.
And it was a really cool time because, you're kind of experimenting. And so that's sort of what got me into the industry.
I love it. So, a couple more stops on the way to going independent. Do you want to talk about some of those, marquee additional roles you had in your resume as you kind of built up to launching your own shop?
Sure. Yeah. After like the social stuff was so interesting to me and the digital stuff was so interesting to me, I kind of wanted to focus on that explicitly. So, um, built the PR place up to a really great spot, but then wanted to kind of go and learn from people that were doing digital all the time. And so that took me to Deep Focus, Ian
Yeah,
Schaefer's
with Ian.
shop.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's just a phenomenal, phenomenal guy. I loved my time over at Deep Focus. I ended up leading our digital strategy team across all of our global offices eventually. Did a little bit of like new product development and innovation work. And then had spent a ton of time in the advertising world, kind of at that like executional level of like, what things are we making for which channels? And my strategy brain was kind of eager to get even further up in the ordinal decision world of like, how do you guide how a brand comes to market? One of the things that was kind of like interesting that we kind of had to invent at Deep Focus was that brands really until social hadn't figured out how to behave. They had only thought about
Mm,
how brands needed to like
how to
project.
communicate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so, we ended up kind of a lot of times just needing to do core strategy work around, like, relational components of a brand identity, like, "Okay, we get that you're bold. What does being bold mean, like, in a situation where you're talking about a product recall?" Like, how do you
Mm,
how do you answer those questions on a Facebook page? So, a lot of that stuff was really intriguing to me, and that took me into the world of brand. So, after Deep Focus, I went to, a brand studio called Collins, run
hmm
by Brian Collins, also in New York, um, and led our brand strategy there, doing a lot of kind of like more global brand relaunches and things like that.
Nice. Okay. And then when did you decide to launch Territorial?
Um, I kind of got to this point that I think a lot of people in our industry get to, where you're just like, I I'm not totally sure what I want to be when I grow up, but I feel like I'm not getting any closer to it being
Mm,
being where I'm at. And uh I had learned so much from being at Collins, being at Deep Focus, starting my own thing in the PR world, that the I kind of just needed to set it down. I was like, I
mm,
quit, and it was not I hated this, I hate you guys, I hate this
yeah,
industry. It was just like my brain feels too full. Like I
sure.
just kind of don't. I can't see the forest for the trees right now
Need a
because
detox.
yeah, like I've been working on deadlines for the past like 15, 20 years. I've been really throwing my heart and soul into this, and I don't know which pieces I want to continue to carry with me and which pieces I'm not interested in anymore. And
Mm,
so I took a few months off. I took a bunch of Coursera courses, and I was really just I gave myself a little bit of time to let my natural interests guide me, and I
mhm.
started paying attention to the stuff that I was interested in. I also had the opportunity like 2 or 3 months into that break to basically like I had promised my husband that like if I get 3 months into this thing and I don't know that I want to become a dentist or like go to law school or whatever, then like I will start taking freelance work just to float things. And so I started doing some freelance work and that went really well. I was really enjoying that for a year. It was nice to kind of like remove, and I feel like I learned some lessons too about kind of like how to remove the types of like motivations that you need to have when you're like trying to be like an AOR company, and just
hmm
like be a little bit more like, I need to focus on this project. I need to be
Yeah, a little
super,
bit more
super focused.
tactical.
Yeah, yeah. it was nice to step away from that. So uh, I ended up bumping into somebody who ended up being my co-founder. He and I started freelancing kind of around the same time. His name's Robert Balog. He had been at Ogilvy on the creative side for a really long time, global creative director level, helped Deloitte start their creative offering, Heat. And he had kind of hit a similar life stage where it's just like, I don't know exactly what I want to be. We had both started freelancing, and we started a little bit of like a support group where we just had like a standing Tuesday tea time, where it's just like, sometimes it was like, what contract language can I use? Can I use your like your standard contract boilerplate to be able to do it for this thing? And sometimes it was just like talking through like new biz or whatever. We started referring each other into to clients that we were working on, and eventually that took us to a place where we're like, we kind of it feels like we're sort of like got something here. We've got a good vibe. We've been working really well. We've started to define a lot of kind of like the things that we feel are most important in the projects we take on. And that was the foundation of Territorial.
I love it. And what brought you to Portland? Is that just a geography change, or was that
Yeah.
part of the business model, part of servicing
No,
clients?
I would love to say that like being bi-coastal was like important for us. Portland's got it too good. The folks out here are living well. My husband Jake and I were both kind of like, we were ready for a new thing. I'd done 15 years in New York at that point. And similar to like me leaving advertising for a little bit just to step away, I wasn't like, I hate New York. It was just like, I don't
Needed
know,
a
I'm kind of
change of
kind of
pace.
ready for a new thing. I want more nature. We still want good food. Um, and so like a lot of the different criteria we went through, like Portland just stood out, and I have no regrets. It is delightful out here. I go trail running. I've got a garden. I do podcasting, like all the things you imagine a Portlander to do. Like I'm checking as many boxes as possible.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to get into some of your experience as a podcaster, both
Oh yeah, yeah.
professionally and personally. So we'll talk about that
Cool.
coming up a little bit. So, all right, I want to dive into some of the questions that we prepared. So, you've been spending a lot of time talking about generative AI, how these new products can help bring marketing products to scale. You also have been talking about this term of polycognitive brands.
Yeah,
Do you want to unpack that a little bit? What is a polycognitive brand?
totally. Um, Polycognitive brands are brands that are meant to be understood by multiple different types of brains. So
Mm,
not just human brains, but machine brains. And that's important because really early on, generative AI, like we've been kind of monkeying around with it for a while at Territorial. We made a ChatGPT instance that we call Terry, the Territorial bot. And a year and a half ago, Terry was awful. Like
mm,
Terry was hallucinating. Terry would go on these wild types of um, flights of fancy, just couldn't stick to a script, really needed to be kind of led along the way. And the growth that has happened in, just a straight up chat GBT model from a year and a half ago today is really astounding. And
mm,
as we've been tracking that, we've been kind of paying attention to what are the ways in which people are using this to create content. What are the other points in a brand's journey where AI, especially generative AI, kind of interacts. Um, it's kind of easy to take a cue from the Luddites who smashed all the factory machines and hoped that it wouldn't affect their lives, but those
Rioters burning Waymos in downtown LA.
yeah, and like, I feel that. I like absolutely feel that. I think
Yep.
the thing that we've struggled to do is to enter this space with less fear and maybe just a little bit more curiosity. That doesn't
Mm,
mean that there aren't an enormous amount of, and I hesitate to even call them externalities, but just like negative consequences of the technology that is being created right now. There's no question about that. There's a lot of like blissful ignorance. I think that like we've started to be able to recognize from disruptive tech as it gets scaled. We saw that before. I think it's kind of helpful having lived through the social revolution in a
Hmm.
professional capacity, because a lot of this stuff kind of smells the same in terms of like
Interesting.
the things that are being told to us are like, oh, this is going to connect people more, and it's going to make it so that people can have a therapist even if they can't afford one. And like, like the same way that Facebook was being told to us, like this is going to bring everybody together. And
Yeah,
we
and then
just
people are more fraction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and like you have to look at kind of where the incentives are in the world. Does that mean that social whole cloth is terrible and it never should have been invented? Like you and I are here talking to each other because social has scaled, and we're going to be able to reach people with these ideas because of that too. So I think it's just more like when we started digging into where Gen AI can fit along the spectrum, we've used that point of view that's a little bit like what's to be gained here, and what are the things that are intriguing to us. So that took us to, I kind of led us on a long way around that mountain. I apologize.
No, I love
But
it.
like the point about polycognitive is that like um we were looking in really small use cases and playing around with our own stuff. And generative AI on just a straight up visual point of view is astounding in the types of things that it can do. And it is also terrible.
Hmm.
And part of that, I think, in terms of like, I did this little experiment on a webinar we did where we took uh, the Nike brand. I told ChatGPT to crawl the Nike Run website, and I invented a new shoe. It's the shoe that takes you from the trail to the street and back, and it has an extra wide toe box because some of us need that. And I was like, name it and give me a series of ads and make sure to include the Nike brand. And within 6 iterations of social quality ads, it had already kind of like gone back on its own name and reinvented it. And it had completely shredded the Nike brand, replacing the
Mm.
N with the swoosh at one point. And, you know, that took less than 5 minutes for an incredibly powerful technology to completely lose the plot.
Mm.
And the reason is because it doesn't understand the parameters. Generative AI is wildly imaginative and is basing its sort of decision set on like recorded human creation. And the strength of that broadness is powerful to be able to harness. But brand strength is in specificity and consistency.
Mm.
A brand only works for you if it appears in a very similar way across a wide range of touch points over time. And so those two things are diametrically opposed, right? You got like breadth, specificity. And so what we thought about is like brands get made, the documentation that goes into it, the guidelines for humans to consume. And what would it mean to create brand guidelines for like a robot brain to consume?
Yeah.
And so that's where polycognitive branding comes from. And we created a little system called bot friendly branding that kind of helps bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's interesting. This idea of now like agentic salespeople, agentic coworkers is something that I saw Rashad Tabakawala talking a little bit about this
Mm,
week. The fact that I guess there was this little fluff up where some AIs went and created their own LinkedIn profiles and started offering their services for,
wow.
for free as freelancers on
Oh my
LinkedIn.
gosh.
And then people were in an uproar about it, so they contacted LinkedIn to try and get these fake people removed from the
Right.
platform. And what is that supposed to look like?
Yeah.
But the reality is that we're not too far away from a world where marketing will happen from agentic person or an agentic coworker to another agentic coworker. So
Right.
brands have to be able to be optimized, and messaging has to be optimized for robots essentially to talk to robots.
Yeah.
Are you guys thinking about that kind of in this construct?
We haven't gone so far as to say what creative does a robot need in order to make a purchase decision, but we
Hmm.
have started to think. And one of the partners that we've done some thought leadership work with, who we really think is great, is a company called Evertune, and they focus on a lot of that like GEO or AEO. I know the industry hasn't quite settled on that. Like, what is SEO in a world of chat driven search? But just even getting to the point where you can recognize that like brand is the new SEO, because you SEO, and that, I think that'll change, right? Because like initially SEO was entirely driven just by reputational human metrics, but we
Hmm.
saw that shift, right? So like the first step of SEO was all like, well, what are people saying everywhere? It's entirely reputational based. But eventually there's so much money riding on the ability to game that
To rank.
system and
Yeah.
manipulate that system, that monetization strategies and technologies eventually proliferated. So we'll get there, I think, in terms of like being able to buy into like recommendation within the chat search world. But
Yeah,
as it
there will
stands
be
right,
ads eventually.
100%. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to see. Like, one of the things that gives me a little bit of solace as an aside about that is because the models so far at their like base level, from like social to the like AI world, they're predicated differently. They are starting on the AI side at that subscription level. So it does make me feel like, yes, ads, there's no way we're not going to get ads in some way, shape, or form and be able to buy your way up in search rankings and all that type of stuff. Um, but because in social, our attention was kind of the currency,
Hmm.
it led to much more manipulative behaviors immediately. And I'm hopeful that like the models of AI being based on subscription mean that like user quality is kind of built into the system a little bit more. But that may just be naive,
Yeah, well, it's like this idea of the logged in internet versus the non-logged in internet, and ad blocking, and are you able to peruse LLMs through not like being anonymous? Probably not. Like
Right.
it seems like a counterintuitive feature at this point.
Yeah.
But the same way that we saw, okay, well, SVOD is going to be the way that we can all hide from advertising. Now, your Amazon Prime paid version still has ads now. Your Disney Prime subscription has
Yeah.
ads. So just as all these things, oh yeah, I'll pay money and bypass the ads. Now they're all kind of,
Right.
giving up that model and doing, subscription plus advertising to the behest of the user experience, of course. But
Yeah.
it's the way that the world goes. So yeah, I imagine there must be a time in which they will open up those floodgates. So
Yeah.
I want to go back to your point about generative AI and the Nike example.
Mm.
So you talked about, creating this campaign for this wide-toed shoe brand, and the reason that it got it wrong is AI is looking at the entire, canon of information around the Nike brand, and then they're misinterpreting it because they're looking at the entire world versus this specific lens. Is there a way to take that first version that comes out and then continue to give it more parameters through better prompting, where you can get to that specificity that then delivers you the result that you would want? Or is it just not capable of achieving that level of specificity yet?
You can definitely iterate and iterate on the types of instructions. Where we chose to start on the bot-friendly branding component was, rather than worrying about like how do we figure out how to give these long paragraphs of like that still result in kind of gestalt creative, which is basically like
Mm,
I give you the full thing, and then I need you to in one be able to give me whatever the thing is. We're starting at the bot friendly branding component that's just like, okay, there are elements of your brand that are going to benefit hugely from having generative AI being connected to making those things. And there are elements of your brand that are way easier currently in our systems for a human to do. And so what we did, for example, for I don't know if you know the consumer research company Suzy, started by Matt Britton.
mm-mm.
He's from MRY. He founded Mr. Youth, and this is one of his pet projects. It's a fascinating company that is kind of like has always been tech first, but really on like surfacing human insights in terms of the research that they do. We did their brand system that they released earlier this year. And so what we did is take a look at kind of how they're bringing their brand to market, their current creative workflow, and then say, like, right now, like, let's not worry about where things are going to be in 3 years. Right now, where are the areas that are the generative AI can really solve some pain points. They do a ton of social content. They do a ton of white papers, a bunch of surveys, and they obviously, as a consumer research company, are in like every vertical possible. So one of the big things that was really a pain point for them was like, we need brand consistent imagery illustrations that can kind of be used for literally anything. Like, we're going to have
Mm.
one thing that's going to be about how Gen Zs use TikTok, and then we're going to have one thing that's about how like boomers drink coffee, and like all of those need to live in the same space. And so what we did is create prompt stacks for them,
Oh, okay.
learning what types of technology they were using to, they had Canva, they were in Midjourney. So we created Canva and Midjourney specific prompt stacks that just said, here's the world of our illustration. It's these types of styles. It uses things in this type of spacing, this type of etc. And then we just created little spaces where you're going to like add in of someone drinking. So you just have to say what it is. What is the thing you want? And the rest of the stack is kind of really clear. And so what that means is it made it super simple for them to be like, when they come to, we're going to release another white paper, it's going to be about theme parks. They can just put in roller coaster into the thing, get an image that is super brand consistent right away.
Interesting. So you're actually creating the brand guidelines through the lens of the prompts themselves. That's where the
Exactly.
consistency needs to be in order to
Yep.
generate things that are somewhat universal across a wide breadth of topics and
Exactly.
potential inputs. Okay, that's
Yep.
really interesting. That's the first time I've heard of that being applied as like, so it sounds like the new brand Bible will need to include, a prompt, basically like an AI prompt manifesto, if you will,
Yep.
as kind of a component of brand Bibles now.
Yes, yes. And what's interesting is that, as with any brand guidelines, implementation is key. And no matter what client you're doing, or what agency it's coming from, I think a lot of times that implementation step does get missed. Where it's just
Hmm.
like, we're going to make the best brand in the world. We're going to make 100-page document. It's going to be PDF, and then like, have fun. Bye. Here's the thing. It's going to be
See
great.
ya. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, implementation is hugely important. That means there has to be buy-in from the uh, enterprise the entire way forward, that you're getting the people who are going to be implementing this along with you on that journey. And the same is when you get into this component. One of the things we talk about with our clients when we're talking about like bot-friendly branding is like, some people are like, I really am interested in accessing the creative time saving and the
They just
efficiencies I
want
can
the
gain from this.
efficiencies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Other people are like, I don't think this is going to be a problem. Nobody uses AI on my team, and I'm like, that's not true. I can promise you, it's not true. Like, you may not have given people the okay, but there's honestly like almost no incentive to like not use it in some ways. And
Yeah,
so,
chat wrote your bio for this podcast today because I couldn't find one easily available.
amazing. That's great. That's great. No complaints. No notes.
Yeah.
Thank you. But the thing we tell them is just like, you have to have the conversation, and like creating a brand Bible that has here's where we're going to use Gen AI in our visual system. Here's exactly how to use it, means that you can start to invite more people into that process earlier. You're starting to tell them, and it means that you're circulating in constructive ways conversations about how to use AI. Do you know Sri Srinivasan? He does Digimentors, and he was like the CTO for the city of New York. He worked at
Mm.
CTO for Columbia University for a long time. Um, Fascinating guy. We actually had him on our podcast, and he gave this really, really phenomenal little like parable that I think is an excellent way to describe it, which is like, he talked about the Palmolive commercial, the old Palmolive commercial where they have a bunch of ladies in the nail salon, and they've got their nails in the little water. and they're telling them about Palmolive, and the lady says like, "Oh, that's great. Where is the soap?" And they're like, "You're soaking in it." And Heath says the same thing now to folks that he's talking to when he's talking about training them and their enterprises on AI. Is like, sometimes you think you've got a product out there and you need to be presented it, and other times you're soaking in it. And he's like, when it comes to AI, you're already soaking in it. So it's time to
Mm.
understand how you're going to leverage it, and what it's going to mean for you and your business.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to move on to a conversation around generative AI as a content creator. We're starting to see more and more, influencers pop up that are basically being generated by AI. And, it's one of those things right now for me where I will watch a video on TikTok like 10 times just because it's so close to being perfect, but there's just something inhuman about it where it's
Yeah.
like, it's almost like whenever a new ad experience comes out or a new ad unit, it has really high performance at the beginning, but then it falls into like ad fatigue because it becomes normal and something that
Yeah.
you see every day. But with AI videos and social, especially ones that are pretty close to being like almost perfectly realistic, but maybe just have like kind of just, I don't know, just a missing human element. Like I find myself watching them more frequently all the way through to try and spot whether it's real or not. As these blind spots pop up for in conventional brand identity systems, are these intricacies between the real and the unreal going to be harder to spot, harder to ignore? Like, what are you seeing in kind of that creator space?
So I think there's a couple things.
Yep.
One is, I think the moment you start getting into talking about whole cloth creation of ad uh, products, ad
Mm-hmm.
creation, ad assets, fully from I think you currently really can't duck the question around like whether is this in what way is this ethical? Is this, like,
Mm,
so I think as a brand, um, going into like full on, like everything we make is completely AI and all the humans you see and the words that you're hearing aren't real. I think that's tough. And I
mm,
think that's a difficult place for a brand to be able to navigate itself. Like how would you explain that? Like Coca-Cola did only AI versioning, it's like Christmas commercial,
mm-hmm.
and encountered an enormous amount of like blowback from the advertising community on that. I'm not sure that normal people were really like, how dare you use AI to insert Milwaukee into this? Like I don't think that happened, but I do think it's as more and more people get laid off, as like I don't think this conversation is chilling out. So I think there's almost a little bit of just kind of like a reputational component of just like,
Mm,
is the amount of time and money that you would save in creating this worth having to have that conversation? And do you feel like you're confident enough about how you're using the product and those products are made in an ethical way? Like you have Disney kind of suing the biggest companies right now, AI companies, about like how they reference Disney's products and where Disney goes. I think we're going to look at a lot of IP law following. And so like there's going to be precedent set in the next year or two. So from that point of view, like, are there quick fixes in terms of like getting out of video? Yes. Is it, if you're worried about reputational risk, I would kind of chill because I'm not sure the juice is worth the squeeze on that money saving. When it comes to the like creator side that you're asking about,
mm-hmm.
I think it's a fascinating thing. And to me, the first things I think about are how everybody freaked out once you could put like filters on your face. It's like, well, no one's going to know what humans look like anymore. We're all going to be these perfect mermaid bots. And like, like I think everybody was really stressed that like we were going to create a world where like humans didn't care about other humans. And I would say that like in really quick succession to the ability to make yourself perfect on social, you had people deliberately making themselves not perfect. You had
Yeah.
the no makeup selfies almost right away. As soon as you had like the makeup selfie filter, you had people doing this is a no makeup. So I think what you're talking about is exactly where we all are, where we're like scratching the itch. You're like, what is going on here? Like, but what to me, and I don't, this may be like my psychology brain now that I'm just bringing back. Like, what to me that means is like your brain is trying to learn the rules of the new thing. And I think we're all there right now. Like, we can't help, you're just like watching it over and over again because you're trying to understand it in the same way we played with face filters for like 3 solid months. And then we were all like, okay, like I'll do it if it's cute. And I kind of get what it is now. And I understand how to spot it. And we're already getting better at that. Like there's already a like ability to understand things are too smooth. Things are a little too like finessed, and I think it's going to be an arms race. The bots are going to want to keep, like, you can see it in voice, like you were talking about agentic, like customer service and stuff like that. Like when I'm talking to ChatGPT now and I'm kind of just like puzzling things out, or like I don't want to type it, so I'm just like having a conversation. It's the speech is much more flawed now. It'll pause. You'll hear it kind of
It's
like,
trying to sound human.
yeah. But
Yep.
the more it tries to sound humor, the more we're going to want to try and figure out like what's the bot thing. Like they haven't added in mouth and breath sounds into AI right now. So like to me, that's one of the major determinants in if I'm listening to audio, whether it sounds like a human or a robot, is like, are there just little like pieces audio wise that make me feel like a flesh
Where's
puppet
the
is
real
making me.
flaws?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, the AI is going to ingest that, and it's going to, and so like, I think this is like the beginning of like a human versus bot arms race around like who can represent truth. But I think there's going to be a lot of like people starting to just like post Polaroids of themselves, or like the moment you can make anything perfect, then perfect is no longer rarity and imperfect becomes the rarity. And like, so there'll be a backlash to the backlash, and I think it'll be a dialectic that continues.
Yeah, it's kind of like brands like Dove using real people instead of models, and then on top of that, no makeup, or some of those, a lot of these challenger brands that have come up and kind of gone more human in their advertising versus models and actors and stuff like
100%.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
love that. So you talked a little bit about the ethics components. Do you think that's going to be an advantage for challenger brands that are popping up and
Mhm.
really have no budgets, no resources, and they don't care and they just want to get big, fast, and grow? Whether that's ethical or not, do you think that will be an advantage to not have to take those considerations in when you're kind of get big at all costs and early stage?
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. No question. Yeah, if you don't have anything to lose, then I'd imagine there are a lot of people who are just running into this whole hog that are just kind of like, let's make what we can, let's pump this out there. The question will be, how long does the system reward that type of thing? I would guess that there's a couple brands that are going to leap from nothing to really long-term popular brands by leveraging this as kind of their way to punch above their weight. You know, every company needs an unfair advantage somehow in order to be able to kind of like accelerate and move through those cycles of growth. And so I definitely think there's going to be companies that don't care, and that like push this out just the same as we saw with like, um, really early, like eventually illegal or unethical uses of influencers.
Yeah, like
Like
not
that.
following FTC disclosures or
Yeah, when it
doing
was
things.
murky.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it was the Wild West, there's some brands that really like just kind of like stepped on the gas and were able to get really far. Most of those didn't last, because like is that's a growth hack. That's not a actual business strategy, and it's not an actual brand. Um, but not all businesses learn that, but some do. Some get to the next level and figure out how to mature and move on from there.
Awesome. All right, let's take a little pivot to you as a podcaster. I love talking to fellow podcasters, and you've got a couple that I want to hit on both. So you co-host Strange Coordinates. You explore culture through the lens of brand. How has this podcast informed you as a strategic thinker and the work you do at Territorial? How do you leverage the long learner perspective? What's a
So I would say, so like you may actually identify with this, and so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Sure.
we really struggled in our early days at Territorial with basically like, what do we say on LinkedIn that isn't already being said? How do we actually provide value? And not just value, but in a way that like we enjoy the process and that also features what we feel is like our secret sauce, that's kind of like exhibits our superpowers. And it was the type of thing that early on in our company, we just kept putting on like a next month priority, next month priority. We'll figure it out later. And eventually we reframed and just said like, okay, like LinkedIn algorithms aside and like best practices aside, what's the thing that like we just really love to do? And the thing that we love to do, there's like this first chat. The first time you get a client who says like, I'd love to work together. Here's the type of thing that I want to do. Here's the RFP, whatever. The first chat that you have is kind of that like pie in the sky, like post-it note, like explosion where you're just kind of like, you're pulling in cultural references, you're kind of bouncing off the vibe of one another, you're thinking about all the things in the category that feel like under leveraged or ignored. You're just kind of like putting a bunch of stuff into a soup. And that always for us in our new business process outputs a slide that's like, here's how we see your current state. Here's what we think is fascinating about it. And here's how we can help. We were like, let's do that. And so that kind of is like what Strange Coordinates is about, is just like every episode, Robert or I will take turns giving the other an assignment of a brand, and then they have to disappear, go off into the brand wilderness, and then come back and say like, here's the fascinating story that I found out. Dylan, I think you might be frozen. Hopefully it's not me. And there we go. It's just me now, folks. You're left in my hands. You can do whatever I want with this. What am I going to do with this time? Let's see. Well, you were asking questions about my decor. Oh, I'd be happy to tell you. These are all thrift store buys. I felt like teapots kind of was a relaxing vibe. It also kind of like sets the scene like, oh, we're going to chill out. We're going to just like, you know, have a good chat. I thought it was a nice little scene setting. What you see to my left is just some items that are little memorabilia from other pursuits. I think we might be talking about clippings later, which is another podcast.
There you go.
Hey.
Sorry about that. Looks like we had a little bit of a tech drop off there, but
no worries. I was just super glad it was. I was like, oh, this could be me, and I did something terribly wrong.
No, I think must have been my WeWork firewall or something. So sorry about that. Stream continues.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the podcast.
Yeah, we went. So when you dropped off, I decided to give everybody, if anybody's watching, I decided to give them a tour of my decor. I was like, why teapots, you ask? I'm happy to tell you.
Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking.
Thanks for carrying the show for me. Good thing I have a fellow podcaster in the room.
I was like, I should have brought puppets or something. I could do little hand puppets, or I don't know. Next time I'll be prepared.
Let's go.
Okay, yeah. So we were talking podcast and like basically like where we were trying to figure out like what's the right thing. And so it kind of stemmed from our new business process. And so every episode, one of us will give each other an assignment that's like, okay, go bring back to me the most fascinating story you can find about whatever brand. And so the next episode is all that. So right now I am waiting so I gave Robert at the end of our last episode, I gave him Post-it notes. And so we're going to record, I think, next week, and he's going to tell us a story about Post-it notes, and I have no idea where the episode's going to take us.
I love it. So, well, there's a couple things that I want to comment on that I think are really cool and really informative to the audience and anybody who's, suffering from imposter syndrome and they wonder if, they should do a podcast, if anybody will listen or watch. The reality is, I've grown this audience to about 31,000 on LinkedIn, official podcast for CAN, official podcast for Possible, official podcast for CES. So, the advice is just to start, and really, like Topher mentioned, you got to find something that's going to be exciting for you to talk about. So Topher went through, the most exciting parts of his business development process, which is this very specific first meeting that you gel with a client and brainstorm and come up with ideas and made that the focus. And I identify a lot with what you're talking about of, kind of the LinkedIn influencer, the LinkedIn growth hacking thing. I don't fancy myself particularly as a great writer. And at my last agency, my CEO wanted us to all try and get like the blue check, influencer designation on LinkedIn by posting every day. Like she gave us like kind of like a list of things that we had to do on LinkedIn every single day in order to kind of game the system a little bit, but get some of those designations and marks. And for me, I was like, well, I don't like writing, but I love talking. And you can only post a 10-minute video to LinkedIn, but if you go live, you can have a long form conversation. And one of the things that I absolutely love to do, and I do it every single day, is I talk to amazing, marketers like yourself and have conversations. So doing the LinkedIn live format was just a way for me to do the thing that I already love doing, and then have the benefit be meeting cool new people, reconnecting with old friends, having interesting conversations, learning every single day. But instead of those conversations being behind, closed doors, they're open to, my community. So I love that. I love what you guys are doing. And then also, you started another podcast called Clippings. So this is your non-expert gardening podcast. Tell me a little bit more about, getting into gardening. What does that do for you creatively to have this kind of outlet around creativity and nature and, taking up your roots as a fellow Portlander? Like, tell me more about gardening as a hobby, but also, why you decided to turn that into a show as well.
Yeah. So I'm like a big audio geek. Like I've just loved podcasts since like early days of This American Life.
Oh yeah,
And I
classic.
just like, yeah, exactly. And so I like really, I think eventually I had just like taken a few classes and I started the podcast in New York. And I was like, I was thinking about how there's been like cooking and fashion, for example, like sewing, like they both had moments where they're like, they're things that some people knew how to do. And then they moved into like, oh my gosh, it's like an entertainment vertical now. Like cooking is now a whole lifestyle. It's a whole, I was thinking about how that hasn't really happened for gardening in the US. And at the same time, I was also thinking a lot about how people tend to think of nature as a thing that you need to leave alone or you need to exploit. But they don't think of nature as a thing that they are a part of and that they are a partner with.
Yeah, and you can
So
cultivate.
yeah, and the cultivation is co-creation, right? Like the and so that's what I take that approach in my gardening, which is just a little bit more like, I don't know, what do you want to be like? And also kind of like, if you're not happy here, you can get out. Like, I'll just, like I ate a salad for lunch. Like, I'm not going to feel bad about taking a plant out of my yard either, because like I kill plants all the time. Like, I need to have some emotional consistency and like normalize plant death a little bit. And like,
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of scary stuff that people carry into gardening that I think is basically rooted in an erroneous assumption about like the role of man in nature, and that we are different than nature. And once you start to think that like I have a right to play with this stuff and I have a right to fail at it, or like, then I think it opens up different ways of us thinking about how we interact with like the natural world in general. And so that was kind of the impetus for the podcast. I also did it with my mom, which was a hoot.
Oh, very cool.
It was so fun. She's a delight. Like so it's really fun. I think we kind of like bring out the best in each other in the episodes that we're in together. So like that was a cool part too. I've done a full season of it. And if it picks up and people are like clamoring for more, I would be delighted to get back in there. Right now I'm like super into Strange Coordinates world and like
Yeah.
really trying to get that out there. But like, I don't know if suddenly I got like thousands of downloads because of this podcast and people wanted another season of clippings, we could do that.
Let's go. And are you more focused on like floral and like decorative and like landscaping, or are you more focused on edibles, a little bit of both?
The former for sure.
Nice. Very cool.
We've got a CSA. I love going to farmers market.
Same. Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't need to put in, to me, the like reward to input like energy. Some people really are enjoying like, oh, it's so good. I grew this like tomato plant or like a squash plant and I got like 3 squashes from it. Like, what a fun season. I don't feel that way at all. Like, I really like,
You're about yield.
yeah, like that's so much work for nothing. Like, it just feels pitiful to me. So for me on the food stuff, like I really like growing herbs because you can grow them in big bunches, dry them, make tea, share them with your friends. Like, it's wonderful to have like fresh oregano just to like cook into a pizza or something like that. So like I like that stuff. But then beyond that, I just want everything to kind of like look cool. I want it to serve like an ecological purpose. I love working with natives and having like pollinator gardens and that type of stuff.
I love it. And then talk about gardening from the perspective of a creative outlet. Like, do some of your best ideas hit you when you're out there, hands in the dirt? Like, is it a kind of a meditative dual purpose where you can express yourself as an artist and create creatively, but do you feel like your business ideas kind of come to you while you're out there?
It's a good question. I think the thing that I appreciate about gardening, that is a good lesson for me to learn, at least creatively, is there's only so much you can do. Like, gardening is not an act of will. Like, gardening is an act of partnership and of support. And so I feel like the lessons that I learn at the emotional level from gardening are like really centered around listening and giving space and like allowing things to germinate in the amount of time that they need. Um, and I like being able to take that attitude into creative pursuits too. I really love collaborating. We do that internally within our own process, but it's also core to how we approach as an agency our relationship with our clients, which is just, you're going to be our best secret weapon. If the thing we make isn't a thing that like absolutely not just represents what you want from this project or this brand, but is also something that you're empowered to carry forward, then it fails. It can't just be a pretty thing in glass. Like, it needs to be something that you can implement. So you need to come along on this process with us. You need to go through this learning with us. And so I think the things that I learned from gardening are a little bit around like the emotional capacity to give that stuff space, to understand that it takes time, and that like the nurturing that you do to co-create something will in the end pay dividends.
I love it. All right, so let's go back to Strange Coordinates. What episode of the show would you suggest the users go back and take a look at, whether it was a guest that represented fashion, fast food, tech. What episode best illuminates your philosophical strategy as a brand strategist?
So, as a brand strategist, if you want to know kind of like how I think or geek out, then I think the Ferrari episode is a wonderful one to go
Mm,
to.
nice.
I'm not a car person. Like, my husband makes fun of me because like I really need to read that. I can't recognize a car from like its body at all. He's like, that's not a, like I'm just like, I don't know. So at first when Robert gave me the assignment, I was a little like, cars. Um, and then what I spent time doing was I was just like, okay, what's the one thing that when I think about Ferrari, like that appeals to me? And it's the logo. I like love
Mm,
the yellow field with the horse rampant. And I was like, I'm just gonna dive into this. And it turned out to be like a massive wormhole. I went from like World War II fighter pilots into um the medieval periods of like what does a horse ownership in the medieval times of like jousting mean, like socioeconomically, all the way through to like what are the roots of the Indo-European language that spawned English. And I
mm,
ended up kind of connecting all the way Ferrari all the way through this journey, and learned about this like early culture that like we don't know anything about because they didn't write anything down. But in a way, that culture has an enormous amount of connection to like the brand equities of Ferrari. And so I don't want
mm.
to give away all of the pieces, but it was like one of these weird things where like I went back thousands of years and found myself in almost exactly the same place that I'd started. And I love it. It's a real wormhole episode podcast. We have some others that are like kookier, like the Celestial Seasonings podcast. The stuff behind
Mm.
Celestial Seasonings, the tea brand, is wild. So that's really fun. But like the Ferrari one is like it's a geek out. It's a geek session.
Yeah, I love it. One of the shows that I've been thinking about doing is, me and my wife like to collect vintage ads, and
Oh, cool.
there's so many companies and so many ad campaigns where the brands are now extinct or they've gone
Mm,
away, and you see this resurgence of kind of these old time brands now where
yep.
people are finding them and bringing them back to life as new products and kind of the old fashioned packaging. So we wanted to do kind of like a brand hunters show where we
That's cool.
investigate some of these brands that have kind of fallen by the wayside. What's
Oh,
the
I love that.
history? When did they disappear? Why did they go away? And is it perhaps time to, bring them back to life?
Yes, and then you do one super successful season of that, and then you plug it into a private equity company, and then you've
Now
got
you're
yourself
thinking.
the whole stream.
I love it. Awesome. All right. So, as a boutique agency founder, over the last few years, what have you found out as the competitive edge that Territorial can offer clients versus maybe established larger legacy firms?
I would say that because we started with the question that was like, what is going to yield? What type of process is going to yield the best outcomes for ourselves and for our clients? Um, it's funny because like everybody says that they kind of do that, but we all know that the agency model really isn't built that way, right? Like the
Hmm.
agency model is kind of built around like what makes sense for companies that are multinational companies in the 1950s. And that's sort of the way that the agency model is built. And like, that's no shade, like great work gets done. There are enormous amounts of talent, super talented people, but like the basic model of how all of these things are created and deployed is very antiquated. And
Hmm.
we didn't approach it from a point of view that's like, what's going to be the best way for us to win Cannes Lions? It was, what's going to be the best way for us to love making great work?
Mm.
And so we've been able to build our processes, our attitudes around an understanding that like the journey is the product, kind of in the ways that I talked about already, in terms of the
Yeah.
fact that like we're handing things over to you that are tools. And so if you can't use the tools, then it kind of doesn't matter how fancy they are. And so with that as an understanding, that has allowed us to create a process that is deeply enjoyable and satisfying for us, that can be deployed specifically against the problems that we think are most important for our clients to solve. And so we think it really rebalances the incentives of a client partner agency type relationship to put us all in the position to do the best work and also really like be happy with how that work gets done.
I love it. Well, on that note, we're approaching the hour. So why don't you tell people how to find out more about Territorial, or if they want to connect with you directly, where do you want to send folks?
Yeah, we are territorial.com is our website. You can check out Strange Coordinates. If you just scroll down the page, you can see our podcast. I'm Topher Burns on LinkedIn. And those should be, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, I'd say like the newsletter is delightful. We put like just 2 out a month, little snippets from the podcast, little like updates from work. That's also on our website as well. So we are territorial.com. That should give you everything you need.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Topher. Appreciate you coming on. For those of you who are following along at home, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. A honest review is the way that the show finds a larger audience organically. And if there's a gardener out there somewhere in your life, somebody who you think needs to learn more about how do you create brands in a agentic world, and how do you start thinking about brand identity from the perspective of robots talking to robots, robots talking to humans, humans talking to robots, or just somebody who you think would enjoy my conversation with Topher today, don't forget to share the show. Thanks again, bud. Appreciate you coming over.